Alright, time for part 3. So first we have Vampire of the Dire Moon. Basically a better version of the typical like 1 mana 1/1 Death Touch, because we also get lifelink, and Vampire is a relevant unit type, relevant creature type. In Limited especially, I think in Constructed we have enough better 1-drop vampires for this not to really make it into any vampire related deck, but it is a different enough option from other things that depending on how the deck looks, it could be relevant. It doesn't hurt existing, basically. And in Limited is a fairly nice card, especially in a lower power, lower synergy set like a Coreset. Next we have Vengeful Warchief. 5 cost 4/4 is already pretty solid, and basically every time you lose life for the first time each turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So yeah, it synergizes well with some of the life loss things, like for example there's this 3-drop that when it attacks you lose a life and draw a card, stuff like that. And obviously if the opponent hits you, you're gonna hit back harder and so on, and this quickly grows out of reach of any other creature. So all in all, while mostly vanilla, it grows pretty nicely and makes it a fairly good limited 5-drop. Not a constructed card, obviously. Next we have Yarok's Fenlurker. This is basically a variant of the Ravenous Rats. It costs double black. Instead, the card gets exiled, not discarded, which is a nice bonus, making you not get punished by synergies where your opponent wants to get cards in the graveyard, and like Reanimator, for example. And in addition, you can buff it later on for 3 mana until end of turn, give it +1/+1, so that's also nice. So all in all, a much better Ravenous Rat, but also a lot harder to cast, especially in Limited. In Constructed, not so much. But not sure how relevant this is going to be in Constructed, but it's at least like a consideration. Even Ravenous Rats have been playable their fair share, and this seems quite a bit better. Next we have Agonizing Siphon. Agonizing Siphon, just your generic OK limited removal. It drains for 3 to any target, so it can kill planeswalkers, deal damage to players, or just kill creatures. Gain some life. It's not an instant, so just a sorcery, and it costs 4, so it's not the greatest rate, but it will do in Limited more often than not. Next we have the Audacious Thief, the card that I just talked about. It's a 3-cost 2/2, and yeah, when it attacks you draw a card and you lose 1 life, which synergizes well with Warrior and with a couple of other things, and just overall is fairly powerful for a 3-drop. The stats obviously are lacking, but there are ways to help with that, and then suddenly this becomes pretty powerful pretty quickly, despite being kind of fragile. Then we have Baroni Vampire, just a generic 3-cost 3/2 reprint, but Vampire being relevant for cards like Sorin matters. So yeah, but past that it's just your generic 3-cost 3/2 that Limited formats are built around these days. And we have Bladebrand, a reprint from Ravnica Legions, still pretty decent. Giving Death Touch and drawing a card at instant speed means you can enable some trades with low impact stuff that otherwise would be kind of useful, and sort of do it for free. Even on defense, like block something big with a 1/1 and then trade and stuff like that. It's just always been a decent tool. Nothing too great. It's a bit expensive and requires your opponent to play into it a bit. But especially in a core set, it's even a bit better probably than it was in a set like Ravnica Legions, I would say. Then we have another Vampire, Blood Burglar. It's a 2-cost 2/2 and has lifelink on our turn, so just like slightly worse than Child of Night in the lifelink department, but a bit better overall, since Child of Night's 2/1 stats have been quite lackluster a lot of the time, so being 2/2 and only having lifelink half the time seems like a pretty good trade-off. And another Vampire for some minor vampire synergies in Limited. Not constructed playable, obviously. Next we have Bone Splinters, another reprint, nothing too special here. Just sacrifice a creature, destroy target creature. There are a couple of things you can kind of throw away easier, like the makeshift Ravenous Red from before, or other utility creatures to make the cost less of a cost. And sort of unconditional cheap removal in limited, unconditional in the sense that it can kill whatever, is still pretty nice, and I can see this making it into most limited decks as a one-off more often than not at all, especially if you have a couple of like throwaway bodies. There's also, for example, the Wolf Cup, or what it's called, in green, that is an 0/1 that makes a 2/2 that you can use this with and stuff. So it depends a bit on like the colors, but in the right deck this can be quite great in limited. And even in constructed this is an interesting effect since it's so cheap and you can build your deck with it in mind. So yeah, even in constructed this is something to keep in mind and opens up some interesting options. And last but not least, for part 3, we have Boneclad Necromancer. Not particularly impressive. Okay, limited cards. A 5-cost 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield you may exile target creature from a graveyard to create a 2/2 zombie token. So if the opponent or you don't have a creature, it's pretty horrible. If you do, it's solid but not great. So seems like a meh filler more often than not in limited, rather than like a good playable, I would say. And yeah, not a constructed card for sure. Alright, that's it for part 3. I'll be back in a moment with the 4th and final part with the remaining 11 cards. So don't go anywhere just yet, I'll see you in a moment.